Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. I'm Gavin Schall, and today I'm joined by the Strickland's owned Prezidente, one of the finest basketball minds on the internet, to talk about the Knicks' horrible loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers, but more importantly, some of the big picture implications to come out of the game, including what exactly is going wrong with Julius Randle right now, Immanuel Quickley hitting his stride, diagnosing some bigger issues with the offense, and if or when they will turn around. So much more right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. We wanted to thank you, as always, for making Locked On Knicks your first listen of every day. We are available on any platform where you can get podcasts. And you know this if you're watching, we are now on YouTube. And as promised, we are joined by Prezidente. His current Twitter name is AKA Classic Blog Boy, like Supras and Creative Rex, or you can catch him at _Prezidente. Did I maybe I butchered that? I might have butchered that, but regardless, one of the goats of Knicks Twitter, draft and analyst extraordinaire, Knicks analyst extraordinaire. We brought him on preseason to talk Kemba Walker, and now he is back on the first night Kemba Walker is not playing. The irony. Prez, welcome to the show.
I'm always happy to join Locked On.
Appreciate it, man. All right, rough night, but we're gonna turn it around because we're gonna probably not focus extensively on this game. The New York Knicks fell to the Cleveland Cavaliers 126-109. The first half was perfectly fine. Derrick Rose was excellent in Kemba Walker's stead. And then Ricky Rubio turned into, I don't know, Steph Curry. Maybe it was Steph Curry on one of his best nights, 13 of 19 from the field, 8 of 9 from three, 3 of 3 from the charity stripe, 37 points, 10 assists. You could also just say he turned into international Ricky Rubio, because this was the same guy who was ripping apart Team USA this past summer at the Olympics. The Knicks had zero answer for him, so they started down the stretch just doubling him. The Cavs consistently picked them apart in 4-on-3s. Young Evan Mobley was bombing away, finished with 26 points, 9 boards, 5 assists, got some help from Darius Garland. Immanuel Quickley had some flashes of brilliance down the stretch, but the Knicks ultimately did not have the firepower nor the defense to win this game, Prez. But I will leave it to you. What were your thoughts on this disaster, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, it was a weird game. I don't think we're used to, even though Ricky Rubio turned into like the Ricky Rubio that we were promised back when he was a 14-year-old in Spain, for all the draft heads who have been paying attention to this stuff for a while, when he was putting up like 50-point quadruple doubles and stuff like that in youth basketball. It's, even aside from his hot shooting, there was still a lot to be unhappy about that the Knicks could control, and that was the annoying thing. Like, shooting, like, you're gonna run into teams with people who get hot. That happens. It's happened to frustrating frequency this year, right? Like Cole Anthony, Jaylen Brown, Miles Turner, OG Anunoby, and now Ricky Rubio, oddly, have all had pretty much their best 3-point shooting games of the season against the Knicks. And in most cases, it's not like those guys were left particularly wide open. They just got hot. But separate from that, like, there was a lot of frustrating stuff. Like, I won't dwell too much on it, but if I had to just tick off some things in no particular order, Mitch had a pretty rough defensive night, but then when he was out, our rebounding problems were exacerbated because the other bigs on the team, aside from Taj, who didn't play, aren't really good at boxing out. Julius is good at collecting rebounds, but this is like a perfect example of why rebounds per game is kind of misleading. If you look at things like box outs and contested rebound success, which you can all look at on NBA.com, Julius is like fine for a power forward, but against a team like the Cavs that have Mobley and Jared Allen, Mitch is usually the guy who boxes out one of them, and then usually Julius is going up against some like wing at the 4 or some skinny guy at the 4 or whatever. Instead, he's going against Evan Mobley, who's way longer, or Jared Allen, who's even more way longer, and both of those guys can hit the glass. So like he was as flat-footed as he has been on rotations this year on defense. He was equally flat-footed on rebounds because he's used to, if Mitch does the box out, the rebound is easy, but that's not the case versus the Cavs. So like he had a rough game on defense and on the glass. And I mean, Noel had a fine defensive game, but like the Cavs bigs are just tough customers. And then the other Knicks had trouble on defense. There was just a lot of what we've seen throughout the whole year, just like inconsistent effort and miscommunication, and all of that just made worse by Ricardo Rubio. I don't even know if Ricardo's his real name, but Ricky Rubio.
It should be if it isn't.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a frustrating night. This felt like the amalgamation of all the like little negative trends we've seen in their losses all coming together in one game. Like you had all the live ball turnovers, you had Julius looking like disinterested and like kind of mopey at different points. I can't even call it Kemba Walker because he wasn't there. You had Mitch looking, and this is something I wanted to ask you about, because I can't remember. I think it was probably on Twitter, not on the show, but I think you were the one who pointed out to me initially, like Mitch is just not winning jump balls this year, and like he just looked a little bit less explosive. And like since then, I've kind of been watching that consistently, and it feels weird to focus on that in a game where he had 5 blocks within the first minute of the third quarter, and yet there was that play like near the end of the shot clock where Evan Mobley just had a rip through and went right by him, and I was just thinking like, man, the whole premise of Mitchell Robinson is like even for someone like Mobley, who's maybe even a freakier freak than Mitch is, like bigs are not supposed to be able to do that to him. Like he's supposed to be like as mobile as any big in the league. And it was just one play, probably not worth reading too much into it, but that sort of stood out to me.
I think it's worth reading into.
Sure, please. Go ahead.
I think that's the $1 million question with Mitch, or probably several $1 million, because of what you said. Like his mobility, he gained the weight, and there's things that has made him better at, right? It's made him a better finisher. It's made him, he was already great at getting contested rebounds and boxing out, and now he's even better at that. He's again, for the second year in a row, leads the league in box outs per game, I think. But right now he's still getting his lungs and his legs under him. So you wonder, like, are those blow-bys gonna stop, or are they gonna be less frequent? Because you're right, like Mitch should be switchable on like much smaller players than Mobley. And Mobley, he's a great athlete in his own right, but like you're right, like Mitch should be able to stay with him normally. And if the conditioning comes back but the quickness doesn't, it's going to be an open question as to whether the trade-off is worth it. And I don't even know where I land on. We literally would just have to see, because like I see someone like Mobley blow by him, and I'm like, damn, it's not worth it. But if I see him stonewalled like Joel Embiid, and I'm like, oh, maybe it is worth it. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's so contingent on the matchup. I would almost argue that I think his quickness is what made him unique, right? And like, and to be clear, like it's not totally gone. Like he's still like a plus athlete on defense, so it's not one or the other. But I think that was like when I was advocating that, like, you just got to find a way to pay this guy. It was because you don't really find that in NBA centers. And that's sort of the skeleton key to keeping a big on the floor in the playoffs. It's that he can, like, in any matchup, like you could switch him onto anyone, like look like if he's guarding like a Steph Curry or James Harden, like more often than not, he's going to get toasted, but he's survivable on that end in a way that a smaller player would be, while still giving you that rim protection, while still giving you that rim running on the other end of the floor. So I think this is, I know I said before, like maybe I was trying to brush it under the rug too quickly. I think this is a really big deal. And like, honestly, like one of maybe the like low key, like bigger storylines in this Knicks season. As far as other disappointing things, I think Evan Fournier, let's save to get into later. RJ Barrett, a very, very poor night for him. 3 for 13 from the field, 0 for 6 from 3. I think essentially did not play in the fourth quarter. Some positives. again, maybe we'll save it for next segment, but I'll just run through everything quickly. Obi Toppin, I thought was pretty awesome, at least on the offensive end of the floor. Again, Immanuel Quickley had that great late burst. Quinn Grimes came off the bench, hit 2 threes. Thought he played decent defense. There were a couple of times where Ricky Rubio got him. But having said all that, let us take our first break, and we will come back and continue this conversation. All right, NBA fanatics, have you heard about Prize Picks? Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. I love it, and I know you will too. Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. Prize Picks offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator and offers all the superstar players as well as bench players, only recording a handful of minutes each game. Prize Picks offers any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown. All of our users that deposit and use our promo code will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 if they use that code NBA. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projection. You can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. Prize Picks even allows mixed sports entries, so you can take the over on LeBron combined with the under on Mahomes. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com, and again, use that promo code NBA or go to your App Store, and don't hesitate to download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. And today's episode is also brought to you by DirecTV Stream. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract, so get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. All right, we are back on Locked On Knicks. Gavin Schall at _Prezidente. I should have mentioned, I can't believe I was very neglectful of my duties. The co-host, am I completely off on this, Prez? You're still co-hosting Pod Strickland, right?
Yes, I am. But the
Yeah.
one you got to pay for behind the paywall.
There you go. Well, you know what? We're worth the money, because it is you and Schwinn together are fantastic. And I say this every time, but I learn something every time I listen to you talk about basketball. So it really is worth it. Anywho, I will throw it over to you. What's a positive or negative or a bigger picture concern that came out of this game for you that you want to talk about?
Let's see. Positives or negatives, just some observations, I guess. Like,
yeah,
one thing. So with Randle's had an odd year. He's had a better distributing year, and part of that is because he has better people to distribute to. But like the decisiveness, I find myself questioning his decisions all the time, and it's because like he seems to be not interested in taking advantage of catch and shoot opportunities. He doesn't have the quickest trigger, so maybe he's a little tentative unless he has a lot of room. But even now, like I feels like a few times a game there's chance for him to just catch and fire, and he'd rather just dribble the ball out. And sometimes, it'll result in a good shot or a great pass, but to me, that's not really good process. Like if somebody else, we're so dependent on him creating advantages that if somebody else creates one for him and he decides to reset it, that it's wasting really critical and rare situations. So like I'm kind of monitoring that. It's just very odd. I really liked Quickley getting into the paint a ton in that burst. That was like,
yeah,
that was the most like he was getting into the paint anytime he didn't decide to shoot. And you can do stuff like that against the Cavs backcourt, fortunately. But he looked like he was shot out of a cannon. So, and then he was making good decisions when he was there, like floater, pass, alley-oop, kick out. So, I mean, I'm happy Tibbs is continuing to find time for him. Like everybody else on Knicks internet, I'm unhappy that Obi is getting the short stick here, especially when Randle's like just bitching to the ref. Oops, I'm sorry. I don't know if I can curse on here. We can edit that out.
No. In this context, it was warranted.
All right. That's my one curse for the day.
Yeah, you're good.
he's complaining to the refs, and I won't. You can complain all you want if you're doing the little things, but our it sounds weird to say for a team that was so incredible on defense last year, but we don't have a Gobert type, so really our defensive prowess is very dependent on everybody pulling their weight. So in that sense, it's a little bit of a fragile defense when you compare it to like the Jazz, who have Gobert and like several legit minus defenders, but
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. If for the Knicks, everybody has to pull their weight. The centers will pull their weight, but then you need RJ, you need the point of attack guys to try, you need the wings to also try, and so it's a little fragile of a defense. So anytime somebody like Julius has several games of just not doing that, it's kind of frustrating. And the last thing I'll say about Julius and I guess our guards, and just kind of relates to the Fournier thing, but although he can create for himself and he's pretty, he's not bad at that at all. Like when he's cooking, it's because the people with the ball on the team are looking for him, whether it's in handoffs or him coming off screens or play calls and stuff like that. And I feel like we haven't done a good job of consistently doing that. And that to me, that falls on Julius, Kemba, and Derek, because they're the three initiators on the team for the most part. And that's something that, even Julius, who has the best chemistry with Fournier out of the three, like sometimes Fournier they'll do the handoff and Julius will just be ready to do Julius ISO Carmelo ball. And I'm like, can you show him a little love? Like he was cooking in the first quarter. And if you don't show him love, the only way he's going to get it is Evan Fournier and big man pick and roll at the top, which isn't like the worst option, but it's not the best option either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% with you on Randle. I think the one word I would say for him, he feels very predetermined this year, right? He's like, this play I'm ISOing, and there was one where he was essentially doubled near the end of the shot clock, and Nerlens was for about 2 seconds just wide open under the rim for a dunk. But Julius, you could tell like his eye level never even changed to see it. Like it wasn't that he like saw him and like looked him off. Like he was just like, I am taking a step back here, no matter what. And you get those possessions, and sometimes like when he's hot and it's going in, it looks amazing, right? Like it's like, oh wow, this is our guy, this is our MVP candidate, our all-star, this is what he does. And then there are times when it's not looking good, and you're like, all right, that was a stupid shot. Like we don't need that last year. And I think last season was, or an element of his season last year that was underrated was as high as the degree of difficulty was, right? And it was pretty ridiculously high. Like he didn't really have amazing teammates. He didn't have a plethora of shooting around him. Had to play with Elfrid Payton, had to play with Reggie Bullock, who's pretty one-dimensional, RJ Barrett, who was incredibly inconsistent. Like he had to do everything, and he did an incredible job of that throughout the regular season. But it was easy in the sense that there was a whole lot of clarity, right? There was no real decisions. Like there were decisions to be made on a play-to-play basis, but there were no decisions to be made in terms of who the number one option was, who was going to dictate the terms of the offense. Like it was Julius Randle's show, and he could get into this incredible rhythm because every single possession it was, all right, am I going to drive to the middle and throw it back over my head to the spot that I know Reggie Bullock will be? Or am I going to shoot a turnaround fadeaway over two players and drain it? Or am I going to try and take a step back three? Am I going to try to get all the way to the rim? There were a lot of decisions to be made, but they were all inherent to him. And this year, there's so much more talent. It feels just very much like this is an offense that is without an identity. And like the nights that it clicks, it almost feels coincidental, right? Like it clicks against the Sixers and for 3 quarters against the Bucks, but then it doesn't really click against the Magic or the Cavs. Like that doesn't really hold up to logical scrutiny. And like my only takeaway from that can be is that like they don't really know what they're doing yet. They don't know like when someone is supposed to get the ball and how they're supposed to get the ball. And as Schwinn came on, he made the point like this stuff should be easy. It should just all be flow. And I think I agree with that to some extent, just because I was like the night he was on, I was saying like I totally agreed with him because there's so much talent there. But I think as the year goes on, you're realizing there's almost a difficulty in having too many options. Like if I can make like a cross-sport comparison, like how weird it is that Baker Mayfield, I don't know if you're a football guy at all, Prez, but like how weird it is that Baker Mayfield is so much better without Odell Beckham. And it just feels like, oh, there's clarity, like when there's not this one person I have to throw it to. And I don't know, like for Randle, if he's like thinking on some possessions, like I have to get Fournier going, or if he's not thinking enough to your point that I have to get Fournier going, because those two have, like, they showed it throughout the preseason. Tonight they had like the back-to-back dribble handoffs for threes. Like one of them, Randle, I think, put behind his back, and it was really pretty. But I think they're all thinking too much, and like there's very little like genuine cohesion at this point.
Yeah, I also think an underrated reason for Randall's tentativeness and pre-decision tendencies is he's trying to expand where he operates on the court a lot, especially in the paint, and he's driving a lot more this year, and it's working in the sense that he's getting a lot more to the rim, and we see like one, if not two, dunks per game from Randle, which is like way more than we saw last year. He'll probably exceed the total number of dunks he had last year by Thanksgiving. And one of the things that's tough about that, and also tough because now he really trusts his jumper, so he's like, I can make any jumper. Whereas last season, almost all of his isolations and his work in the mid-range really came from two situations. That was it. One was the right baseline, operating there, one-on-one, and the downside is the baseline's kind of a defender, but the upside is you can see where the double's coming from the most part, because you know it's not coming from the baseline because that's out of bounds. And then the thing where he would sweep through the middle and try to either draw the foul, or if the foul isn't there, just throw like 100-mile-an-hour fastball to a shooter. And with the new rules, you can't really do that. You can't do the foul drawing thing where you just sweep through and, you know, you're not going to get that foul anymore. So really the defense is like they can play that a little easier. So he hasn't had as much success in the middle of the paint, and he's developed some workarounds. Like occasionally you'll see him do the like the fake fadeaway and then up and under, and he's used that to great effect to do some great dump off passes, because he's super talented and he's still a scoring threat. But like I still think he's trying to figure out what his game looks like what his go-to is this year. Like if you ask anybody who watches the Knicks this year, what's Julius Randle's go-to move this year, like there's no answer. And it's not because he hasn't had games where he scores, it's just he hasn't figured out what his bread and butter is for scoring yet. And last year, everybody knew the answer. It was fall away to the middle or fall away on the baseline. And then early in the year, like catch and shoot threes. And then later in the year, some pull-up shooting. And, you know, the pull-up shooting from three will come around. But like I said before, like he's getting more catch and shoot opportunities and wasting them. And inside the arc, he doesn't have go-to. So it's really tough for him right now. And that's not even talking about his rebounding and his defense, which is apathetic at best in most of these games. So I don't know. He's got a lot of figuring out to do. The fact that he's still so good in spite of that just shows how talented he is. But if he's going to be our best player, he's going to need to figure that stuff out sooner rather than later.
Good save. All right, with that, we'll wrap up segment 2, come back, and bounce around the rest of the team. Some big picture questions with Prez next on Locked On Knicks. I love Thanksgiving, all the good food and treats and plenty of them. But maybe you want a yummy dessert that isn't so full of calories and sugar. It's the perfect time for Built Bars. Built Bar is the new holiday dessert. Feast on something delicious and feel good about it. One slice of pie has upwards of 300 calories, and that's on the low end. Most Built Bars are only 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar with plenty of protein. Replace the coconut cream pie with a coconut Built Bar, or go for a raspberry Built Bar instead of raspberry pie. Lots of good flavors to replace any pie. Low calorie, low carb, low fat, high protein, covered in 100% real chocolate. Built is a great option for when you're hungry. If Thanksgiving isn't coming soon enough, go for a Built Bar or two. Share some at your family gatherings. It will make things less awkward. Maybe Aunt Betty hasn't tried a Built Bar quite yet. New surprises all month, limited time flavors arriving at Built.com regularly, so check the site often. There's nothing like a Built Bar Black Friday. Mark your calendars. Black Friday will be a huge event with all sorts of offers. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, use that promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, we are back on Locked On Knicks, third and final segment with the great Prezidente, co-host of Pod Strickland, and we wanted to remind you to continue to make Locked On Knicks your first listen each and every day. You can find us on every podcast platform there is in the world, and now, and you know this if you're already watching, on YouTube. All right, so we're just talking Julius Randle. I echo all your points. I'm curious if we don't have to go in depth on this, but I'm curious if the solution for it is like schematic, and you say like, do you just simplify things for him and get him back to some of those spots that he was thriving in last year? Or I think the higher upside option is to just like sort of let things take their course. And even if the Knicks struggle a little bit, like maybe just naturally over time, like these things will sort themselves out. I don't know. What's your take on that? Do you think, and like maybe this is bigger than just a Randall question. This could be like a lot of this could be about someone like Evan Fournier too, who you were just mentioning, like they have to find ways to get him going. And in some ways, not to tangent off too much off my tangent, but his season has been very, very strange in that this is a guy who I by and large loved watching. Like every time he shoots a basketball, I think it's going in. Like he is every single night. Like I'm sort of surprised by something he does, whether it's like his elevation on a pull up or tonight he had a neat little ball fake and finish around the rim. And yet you look at the total package and it's not horrible. Like 15 points, 3 boards, 2 assists, shooting the ball like well enough this year. But it feels like I was hoping for the occasional like really big game for him. And it feels like we've rarely gotten stretches where you're saying, this is the Evan Fournier quarter or even the Evan Fournier like 5-6 minute stretch. And when it does, it's rarely self-created. It's because, to your point, Randall got him going with a couple of dribble handoffs. And I asked that as sort of a microcosm of the offense as a whole and sort of the bigger questions about this team offensively. Are these things that just need time, or are these things that Tibbs has to tweak either lineups or schematics in a certain direction to get them going?
A little bit of both, but I do think Tibbs, there are low-hanging fruits that I'll be curious to see if Tibbs plucks them or not. Julius on the right baseline, his hot zone is the one that jumps out. He's like never there during the game. He never gets the ball during the game. He gets it on the other baseline, and he just operates in the middle of the paint all the time. And it's really hard to operate in the middle of the paint. Even Jokic doesn't do that as an offensive hub. He usually operates a little bit at an angle for that reason. So like it's very tough to do that. So Tibbs, if you're listening to Locked On Knicks, please get my guy back on the right baseline. And then the other stuff I do think is a combination of Tibbs and the ball handlers, getting Fournier involved more. If Grimes plays, getting him involved more. We saw him today, and he's the least tentative shooter on the entire team. So I would really like him to play more, especially, we've seen a tick down in 3-point attempts and 3-point rate in the last couple of games. And there's probably no better player on the roster to fix that issue than he will be a perpetual league leader in 3-point rate as long as he's in the NBA. Even it seemed like 5 minutes he was in, he got up, I think at 2, maybe 3 threes. So
he got 3 threes. Yeah.
3 threes. Right. Like, cause he's not a tentative at firing over contests. Even Fournier can sometimes get a little tentative unless he's feeling it. So, Tibbs through his rotations and through his schemes can do some tweaks. And the big picture early question for me with Tibbs that I'm curious what you think. Like, we all want him to change this, change that, right? Like, some of the changes are big, some are little. Give Obi a little bit more minutes, rest Randall a little more, mix up everybody has their thing that they want. But one of Tibbs' main goals is probably to nail down the chemistry of his top 6 guys, which is the starters plus Derek. And you can't really do that without letting them work through the stuff, like you said. So, like, as much as I want them to mix and match and let Quickley play and free Quentin Grimes and mix up Obi with the starters and all that stuff, like, there's something to be said for just working through those unfortunate growing pains. It's just hard to watch as a fan sometimes when the growing pains aren't always like, sure, some of them are schematic, like, all right, when do we get this person the ball, that person the ball? But it's much harder when the growing pains are like, can you do your job? Can you rotate? If someone delivers you an open shot, can you shoot it? Like, that's the annoying stuff. But that's part of working through it as well, unfortunately for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point, and it's funny because it was just a completely new team, so we haven't really talked about it. But wasn't that sort of the primary frustration in the Hawks series last year that Tibbs maximized the team's regular season output, potentially at the expense of having more answers against a team that had some of those alterations and was able to make some of those alterations in Atlanta. And it just sort of felt like that was not something that was explored in the regular season. And that's not something like last year. Like I kind of thought that was BS because it was like, look, like what did you want? Like he could have made certain changes. Like maybe those changes, like if they'd been implemented correctly throughout the regular season, maybe would have won them an extra game. They weren't going to win that series regardless. And if they had made those changes and gotten a lower seed, then they weren't going to win whatever other series they were in last year. So I thought last year it ultimately didn't make a difference. But this year, I think this is a team obviously with a higher ceiling. And that sort of like, and it sounds weird to say that the experimentation would be playing the starters more because that's what Tibbs has done his whole career to begin with, obviously. But I think there does have to be a commitment to that, and the mixing and matching, to your point, needs to be a little bit more of a luxury, which is a shame because my favorite lineups are sort of the hybrid ones, like when we get RJ in there with the bench. To your point, like anytime OB gets significant time with the starters is really interesting. When Quickley gets time with the starters, it's fun. Like heck, like I'd love to see, to your point, Grimes slotted in there every once in a while. Probably not going to happen, but yeah, suffice it to say, with you. Was there anyone else? Maybe I think maybe the next guy I'd want to touch on is Quickley because I thought at the start of this game, like maybe it was first or second quarter, I typed out like a question to ask you, being like, "All right, what's up with this dude? Like, why aren't we getting the same person we got last year?" And then obviously at that fourth quarter, where he really turned it on. 12 points, 5 assists are what he ultimately finished with, but just everything about the way he was. Like it felt like he had sort of his swagger back. Like even in the first half, he had that little like it wasn't even a big play, but like that slick little like behind the back pass to Obi that got Obi a running start off a screen, like going to the rim. Obi ultimately got a double pump layup. Then he had the extra pass to Randle in transition after Fournier like faked the pull up three. That was maybe my favorite single play on the night. And then he comes up, starts hitting pull up threes, starts getting all the way to the rim. His assist to Grimes was also awesome, like where he just sort of where he paused, like dusted Rubio, got into the lane, sort of like twisted his body in midair, had the strength, like similar to this. We see Rose do this all the time, but it's cool that Quickley has the upper body strength for this, like twisted and like in the air, like launched it to Grimes in the corner for three. So this game was sort of everything I wanted from IQ in terms of like the pull up swagger, the pick and roll savvy, getting all the way to the basket. But it's been sort of few and far between this year, and obviously given like how little he's played, like I give him a break. Like it's hard to get in rhythm like that. But I'm curious how you would diagnose his issues and like what he ultimately needs for more consistency this year.
Yeah, I think this game and the last game were easily his best games of the year. In the last game versus the Bucks, he was phenomenal on defense. Like I would say of all the perimeter players, he's probably been the most locked in on defense. RJ has like the moments of insane wing defense, but off the ball, he's still been a little shaky. We see him get back cut once or twice a night, pretty much. And there's occasional miscommunications with him, which is not always his fault. But anyway, RJ's played very good defense this year, but Quickley may not have as much raw defensive like tools and talent, but like he's still 6'3" with like a 6'9" wingspan, which is basically the same wingspan as RJ. And he's been much more consistent and aggressive with his help defense, and his man defense has been solid too. Ricky Rubio explosion aside, like so like that's on one side of the ball, and then his passing. I'm pretty sure, like aside from Randle, Quickley's been the best passing guard on the team this year. It's been as a bench player, so like your mileage may vary on that, but like we saw like the passes he was making today, like he's he's capable of quite a lot now. And we've seen the oops, we've seen the kickouts, we've seen the weak side hitouts and stuff like that. So the only things left was the ball going in the hoop from far and the ball going in the hoop from close. And now the ball is starting to go in the hoop from far and the ball is starting to go in from close. So like,
Yeah,
I'm very content with where he's at. He's probably the one Nick right now, along with RJ, because RJ gets a 1-game mulligan because he's been so great.
yeah.
I mean, he scored 20 in 5 straight games, so I'm not going to complain about him. But
Rose, does Rose get there for you?
oh yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. I forgot about Rose. Rose has just had such a great beginning of the year, and scoring wise, that like even on defense, he's been solid. Like I have no complaints about Rose on the whole. So those three they're in the good boy house, and everybody else in the dog house.
Yeah, you just got to be putting it in from far and putting it in from close, and then and you're good.
It's all basketball is.
Yeah, it's really we overcomplicate it with these 45-minute podcasts, but it's pretty simple. All right, let's talk Obi Toppin real quick, because I thought he was like I was thrilled with the game he had today, and like maybe I didn't pay close enough attention to his defense, and that could have been an issue, and I could have totally missed it. But I just loved like his decisiveness, and that seems to be a real theme with him this year, where because he's like I'll use my one curse of the episode, like he's not someone who can afford to fuck around, right? Like he needs to catch it and go, and that's what we saw today. Like quickly got it to him, a little like behind the back drop off straight into the lane, and then like once he builds up some momentum, that's where you see like the guy who was like the most unstoppable offensive player in college basketball, like switch hands around the rim, caught a pass in the corner, quick pump, speed by a closeout, jump stop, or rather a jump stop and then a double pump finish right around Evan Mobley. And then he had like his classic like faux dribble handoff to draw foul, which works even when no one is within 10 feet of him. It's maybe the single most amazing move in the NBA. And then had another one where he had a catch, immediate drive by Evan Mobley for a layup. And again, like Mobley, like we just established, is like not a joke of an athlete, like probably going to be like at some point like the most mobile big man defender in the NBA. And Obi, because he went quickly, like absolutely toasted him, and then finished his day with this little like reverse spin, like pause along the baseline, then little jump pass to Nerlens Noel for the layup. And like his passing hasn't, I think just because of like the role he's played in, because he's playing with so many creators, like whether he's with the starters or the bench or a hybrid lineup. But just a reminder that he's a smart, intuitive passer, and like the more you get him on the move, the more you can leverage that passing.
Yeah, totally. The Knicks guards don't do a great job of getting him the ball, and Quickley's probably the exception to that. Quickley loves getting him the ball.
Yeah, they're boys. They're boys.
Exactly. So you can tell they have that chemistry. And his passing has really shined through. What is most amazing to me about Toppin is now that he can dribble the ball a little bit and he's very decisive, but they're not. It's one thing to be decisive with good decisions versus bad decisions, and he's been mostly decisive without predetermining his decisions. So like he'll get the ball, see an opening, and decide I'm going hard. That doesn't mean he's gonna shoot or pass. It means he's going hard and he's gonna read the defense. Like that jump pass was the perfect example. Like they made great rotations. I thought he was gonna get to the rim and they walled him off, and I was like, how is he gonna find his way out of this one? And then he just fired it, and then I was like, oh my god, Nerlens caught it, and then Nerlens hit the layup, and then his craft around the rim, like he's still, I mean, this is gonna come down eventually, but I'm pretty sure he's still like close to 95% from 0 to 3 feet this year. I think he's yeah, not bad. I think he's missed like 1 or 2. It's probably, actually no, I wonder whose has higher. I know Obi's had way more shots there, but that's a great question. But like when he dunks it, obviously it's good money, but like the layups, I'm just, sometimes I'm like, how is he gonna scoop this one in? How is he gonna flip this one in? And he's getting to like, one player I used to like back in the day, because I've been in DC for a minute, is Anton Jameson.
Yeah.
And this was like older Anton Jameson when he stopped dunking on people. And it was the same thing. I was like, how's this guy gonna, like, it's a post up, but it's kind of a face up. It's not particularly pretty, but somehow he finds the angle, and it's just so soft every time he goes off the glass.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's the intuition that we kind of
Mhm.
saw coming out of Dayton. Like if you, like people were asking like, all right, what's his like special skill in the NBA? Like it's the athleticism combined with like he really just he does have that feel around the hoop, and it was fun like watching him. Well, not fun. It was frustrating watching him early last year, but the moments that were fun were because like even there were all these plays where he was completely covered and he still found a way to make like these fluky running hooks. And now that he's actually figuring out a way to get like easier versions of those shots and like by actually like catching it on the move or like getting going quicker, like all those things are becoming just a little bit easier. But Prez, I'm happy we could wrap this up on a note of optimism, given the nature of this game. Again, the Knicks fall to 6-4 on the year, 126 to 109. But I would, and maybe I don't know if you like maybe final comment on this, but I am still like fairly excited and optimistic about this team despite the bouts of inconsistency because it really like not I think defensively, which we didn't really get into today, like maybe you could argue some of these problems are inherent and like ultimately not fixable, but on offense I very much think like they're going to hit their stride and they're good and like obviously like by a lot of metrics they already are really really good, but they can be quite a bit better than they currently are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think on defense, a lot of it is fixable. To be honest,
Yeah.
when you talk about Mitch's conditioning or just guys missing rotations, like it's guys who made the rotations last year, so it's in many respects, or guys in the Celtics guards who have made rotations before. So, I mean, it's not like we saw it versus the Bucks. They put it together for 3 quarters, and everybody was hitting all the rotations, and um, even without Middleton, the Bucks are no scrubs. So it's just the inconsistency is maddening, but I'm still overall pretty optimistic.
All right, as good a note as any to end on. Prez, thank you so much. Before I let you go, can you tell people one final time where they can find you on social media and where they can find all your work?
Yeah, at _ Prezidente with a Z on Twitter. You can find my writing on the strict.land. I haven't done any writing in a while, so you probably have to go digging to find some. We mentioned before, I co-host one of the 2 episodes of Pod Strickland that is for Patreon subscribers, but you can still also catch my other rarer every other week podcast, Draft Strickland, which is free 99. And if you're listening, I got some really good episodes coming out that are gonna blow people's minds. So please stay tuned for Draft Strickland. Now that it's not quite draft season, that means I get to think outside of the box and figure out some cool guests to get on. So we got some good stuff coming.
All right, just give me a name, the one prospect you're most excited to talk about.
This upcoming year?
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't.
Well, maybe too loaded of a question.
No,
in a post podcast wrap up. But.
Like 90% of the draft people are way ahead of me right now, but I would say one guy who I'm excited about is Jaden Ivey. He's a returner. He had a great summer with Team USA in the FIBA tournament, playing with Chet and all those other guys. And all the new prospects are awesome and new shiny toys and all that, but I feel like he's going to put it all together and surprise some people. He's already like a very highly regarded prospect. So, but I don't know if every year, I end up with like 1 or 2 guys that I'm like insanely irrationally high on. I haven't figured out who those are yet, so we got to stay tuned.
The Grant Riller Award. But yeah, all right, we'll call it on that. Thank you so much, Prez. And that is it for this episode of Locked On Knicks. We really appreciate you tuning in. As always, if you are not, subscribe on your podcast platform of choice and subscribe on YouTube because we are producing shows 5 days a week and you're home for the most consistent Knicks coverage out there. Until next time, peace out. Be good.